Hello. I thought I would just talk about the front covers of my poetry collections, the artworks, which are mostly, if not all, painted or drawn by me. Um, and these are the ones which I used in Place, which is my compiled works, which I'm compiling at the moment for publication. And there were lots of other drawings and paintings that I've done in the past which accompanied the poetry, in particular Muscovy Commotion and Lond, which both of those collections I created drawings in pen and ink of the locations that I was using to inspire me to write the poems. So there's a poem and a drawing for, there's a drawing for each poem in those collections. But in Place, I just wanted to use the front covers that I'd intended to use on the collections. So, and the front cover of Place is just a black cover. So the colour is actually called Warm Black. And I wanted it to be like that because I was very keen for it to not imply anything other than what the focus of the writing is, which is about locations, our interactions and our connection to locations. So let's just have a look. I'm just going to prompt myself by looking at these on the screen so I can see what it was that I painted or drew. So the first one, I think these will probably be in order, the same order that they should appear in Place, which is chronological. So the first collection was 33, which was first half songs, because I used to write songs when I was a teenager, and the second half was poetry, because the songs became poetry in the sense that I started writing poetry and stopped writing songs. So 33 didn't actually have a cover artwork, and it was just a white cover. And but it's worth mentioning, I think, that there were lots of photos used in that collection, and some of the photos were from professional, semi-professional artists, which were picked up in Brighton in the various shops down there. And some of the artwork was from Yulia, who was my Russian girlfriend, but she wasn't my girlfriend then. I just knew her, but I really liked her photography. But of course, none of my collections were published officially, although they all appear on my art website. So that's 33. So Grantchester Chronicles. That's an oil painting that I painted when I was living in Cambridge. I used to walk up to Grantchester regularly, and I used to have tea at the Orchard Tea Rooms, which is very famous tea rooms. Many poets used to hang out there, and Pink Floyd used to hang out there. Quite a few well-known people. And it's really nice to go walking up there. It's beautiful. The meadows, Grantchester Meadows, is beautiful. And the painting is of I called it the gateway, but it's a kissing gate, which leads from the Orchards Tea Rooms garden into Grantchester Meadows. And I suppose I was doing a lot of reflection about my father at the time. He'd passed away not that long before. So the two figures in the centre walking along the pathway are supposed to be my father and myself as a boy. My father with a dog on the lead and me with a football. because he used to take the dog for a walk down the field where we lived, and I used to always want to go with him and take the football. He didn't actually want me to go with him very often because he just liked his quiet time with the dog, I think. But anyway, such is life. So it's me reminiscing about that. And I wanted to make the foreground really dark, which I did. Lots of use of black, which a friend of mine who I got to know in Cambridge, she was an artist, a proper artist, would have slapped my wrists for, because she said, "Oh, you must never use black in your paintings, it's only for adjusting the tint." So anyway, but there are some secret images in this painting. I don't know what happened to the original. I have no idea where it is. It's probably, I think a lot of my paintings got thrown out, just put in a skip when I moved house in a urgent situation. In fact, that happened twice. And half the paintings one time, half the paintings the other time. I think they all ended up in the skip. So I had a UV pen at the time, and I put lots of UV things in this painting, UV images. And I think I put gravestones on the grass in the meadow. And some other things, I can't really remember what it was. But if you had a UV lamp, then you could see those show up through the painting, which worked really well. Bit of self-indulgence from me, but I quite enjoyed that, because when I was a kid, I used to want to be a private eye, and I was really interested in spy work and different devices that they used and techniques and that sort of thing. Sorry about the seagulls. I've left the window open because it's nice and cool. So I hope we don't make too much of a racket. The Gothic Library. So the Gothic Library was written when I was living in Havant with my mother temporarily in Barncroft Way. And the Gothic Library is a building in Staunton Country Park, which is in Havant. I used to go walking up there quite a lot. And you could pay to go into this area, which had animals and various other things. And the Gothic Library was in there. And it is, as you see in the painting, if you ever get to see the painting. And I used to take photographs, basically, and I didn't paint plein air. I used to take photographs and then go home and work from the photographs. I was really pleased with how the peacock turned out in the foreground on that painting. The Gothic Library was okay, and she wasn't too bad. I quite like the painting. But the Gothic Library is a very small building. They don't have any books in there, but they have a sort of wallpaper around the building that looks like books on shelves, so it feels like a library. I don't know if it's an octagonal building or maybe more. 1, 2, 3. I think it might be octagonal. But it's very small. It's probably only 3 meters, 4 meters wide. A really unique building. Fascinated me. So I only used to go and see the animals very rarely. I probably only went in there once, in fact, because I didn't have a lot of money then, and it cost quite a bit to go in. But I used to walk all around Staunton Country Park, which was free. Sorry about the noise from the mouse as well. I'll try not to do that. Gothic Library. Smiles is next on the list. And I think Smiles didn't yet have a cover image, a front cover, because I hadn't finished it, basically. So I wrote this collection, or I started writing it because of my aunt passing away, and after she died I found a poem called The Value of a Smile by Frank Irving Fletcher, which is a fascinating story. I think I will go into it, actually. I wasn't going to go into it, but I will tell you the story. So So I found this on a piece of paper, this poem, and it was typed. My aunt used to be a typist, and she wanted to be the next grade up, but she could never pass the exam. She took it about 8 times. But anyway, in the typing pool, they used to pass little notes around. So they used to type up something and pass things around. And this was one of the things they passed around, this Value of a Smile poem. So this was originally written by Frank Irving Fletcher. And as it turns out, I did a bit of research, and Frank Irving Fletcher was probably the first marketeer. So I believe he was an American. I think he worked for, was it Macy's? It may have been Macy's, one of the big department stores. And he was the first person to change the billboards and posters from being a list of products that were available and their prices, which is obviously very boring, to having events days and selling a lifestyle to people. So he was really a pioneer of marketing. And I read one of his books, I think it's called The Lucid Interval, which you can still get if you import it from America, an old copy. And so I found this poem on a piece of paper in my aunt's house in her bungalow when I was clearing her bungalow after she died. I just had one of those moments, probably cried, I think. So let me just read the poem quickly. So it's, it costs nothing, but creates much. It enriches those who receive without impoverishing those who give. It happens in a flash, and the memory of it sometimes lasts forever. None are so rich they can get along without it, and none so poor but are richer for its benefits. It creates happiness in the home, fosters goodwill in a business, and is the countersign of friends. It is rest to the weary, daylight to the discouraged, sunshine to the sad, and nature's best antidote for trouble. Yet it cannot be bought, begged, borrowed, or stolen, for it is something that is no earthly good to anybody, till it is given away. And if in the last minute rush of the business day some of our colleagues should be too tired to give a smile, may we ask you to leave one of yours, for nobody needs a smile so much as those who have none left to give. So you can see how powerful and inspiring that is, and what Irving Fletcher did. I presume that he wrote that poem. I believe he did, called The Value of a Smile. Very hard to find on the internet, but this will be a lasting record of that poem, which is probably making this video worthwhile. And he put copies of this poem up on all the checkouts in the department store, and to encourage the staff to always smile. And so the customers would see it and they would smile too. And he believed that that made for really good practice for selling, marketing, making customers happy. And I think he also clocked something there, which was pretty clever, which is now called cognitive dissonance in marketing, where after a purchase you get a feeling of cognitive dissonance where you're unsure whether you made the right purchase or not. And this can last up to 2 weeks, apparently. For example, a woman buys a dress. A couple of days later, she's phoning her friends saying, "Oh, what do you think?" Sending them photos or showing them. Do you think I made the right choice? Do you think it was good value for the money? All this sort of thing. And we then, after the purchase, look for validation of the purchase with our nearest and dearest. And he was tapping into that, and his book being called The Lucid Interval, I think that's what he was talking about, really, is that lucid interval of sort of cognitive dissonance when you ask someone a question and they're doing a meta search to make I'm going into psychology now, to make a decision or about something based on the information that they retrieve from their brain, and it's a half a second gap. And it's the same gap that Milton Erickson, the psychologist, used to use to induce hypnosis through a handshake. Right, got to cut off there. Part 2 in a moment.